Today on Locked On Women's Basketball, we talked to Jamie Steyer Johnson about everything transfer portal, who's in it, who is committed so far, and kind of getting a little bit into how the transfer portal works. So make sure to listen to all three segments because we're going to get into the nitty gritty. But thank you so much for joining. This is Locked On Women's Basketball presented by FanDuel.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Chelsea Leite and I'm joined by Jamie Steyer Johnson, who we're just going to get into like all things transfer portal today. I think that it's a good time considering this is a huge week for people declaring for the transfer portal and people are already starting to commit. But I also think because the transfer portal is such like a new thing in especially women's basketball, because it factors so much into women's basketball than men's, that a lot of people don't really know exactly how it works or exactly, what some of the rules are and how people decide to go into it. So I thought it would be a good chance for us to talk today, just kind of in this in between before Final Four prep starts. So thank you so much for joining me, Jamie.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to be able to kind of discuss this stuff. For those who don't know me, I work with Iowa State. I do radio, I broadcast a bunch, but my mom has also been a college coach for, more than my entire life. She's been at Iowa State for over 20 years. So I know a little bit of the media side, of the player side from people I know, and then of course kind of the coach, the administrative side. And it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. So I always know how hard it is for fans trying to get information. Like it's hard to get a lot of this information from anywhere. So if I could shed a little light, provide a little clarity, certainly happy to do so and talk a little bit about some of the moves coming up.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned the other day, because we work together, in a few different things, but you mentioned the other day that your mom just like doesn't have time off anymore because of the transfer portal. Like you finish your season and you just go right into transfer portal stuff.
It literally used to be that like, okay, you can schedule a vacation for like right after the season ends, like right after the Final Four. And now it's like, oh, that's one of the worst times you could possibly be off because the transfer portal is a finite window. And so you don't want people gone when players might be entering. And then, there's a week or two here and there that people get some time off, but it's certainly very different from when I was growing up. And that's kind of the game as a whole.
Yeah, that's so true. So yeah, let's just talk first about who's in the transfer portal if people haven't been following for college basketball. There's so many different players who either still have extra eligibility and have decided. The biggest one is Olivia Miles. Let's just get into that because, we talked about this on our other podcast, the press break on Her Hoop Stats, just about Olivia and, how shocking that was and what our reactions were. But maybe just, give us a little bit of insight on what maybe the process will be for Olivia, maybe, what schools are looking for, what she may be looking for when, transferring out of Notre Dame and instead of going to the WNBA draft.
Yeah, so part of, I think, what we're seeing right now, as you said, a lot of announcements coming, and that's when the transfer portal opens is after the end of the second round. And so we'll get into some of these logistics in a little bit, but that's why we're having kind of this big wave of entrants. We're having a lot of people whose seasons ended. And then you also have people who, if they're deciding between potentially using another year of eligibility or going into the WNBA draft, the deadline for that is this coming week. And so their time is very short on whether to decide if they're declaring and foregoing all of their eligibility or if they're staying in college. And then they could decide to keep their eligibility, not go to the WNBA draft, and then afterward choose to go into the transfer portal. But, a lot of people just make that decision all at once. So specifically for Olivia Miles, there's so many things that go into your decision. And that's another thing that we're going to get into here in a little bit. But she's going to be one of the most pursued players in the transfer portal. The top two types of players are very broad. That are most prized in the transfer portals, but it's because they're very broad, but they're not super common. And that's point guards and posts. And that's really what sets teams apart from, the middle of the pack, the bottom of the pack to really the elite. that's the kind of player that can set you up for success and really elevates the team around them. That's the kind of thing that you really can't have a high level of success without at least something there. And when you have an elite player at the post or point guard position, or even both, that's even better. But that's really, when you talk to a coach, if you're saying, oh yeah, what are you looking for in this offseason? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say at least one of those two, and probably both. Maybe depth at the point guard position. You know, we like what we have coming back, but we'd like more depth. You know, you can never have too much. And so especially someone like Olivia Miles is going to be a major factor there. And so, you know, there's going to be other point guards in there too, because obviously when you're prized like that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities as well. And so, you know, you get into some of the names that people don't know quite as much, but maybe their addition to a team that's already solid can take them up to the next level. And so for that, I look at players like Wyvette Mayberry from Kansas, who was out for a lot of the season, and she really had made such a great impact there. You have Tody Morgan, who's leaving Georgia Tech. She definitely would be a massive pickup. And then you have some ones where you get into some additional sort of factors. Like you have Keomi McMillan leaving Rutgers. And obviously, if you're following women's basketball, you probably know something of that kind of whole saga. But where she lands, you know, she's going to have the opportunity to impact a program in a massive, massive way. But it's going to be with a coach that's willing to work with her, that she's willing to work with. And, you know, there's going to be people that are a little bit understandably hesitant because of the way things unfolded at Rutgers. But with a player of that caliber, you know, you have real conversations, you have sometimes tough conversations, and there's going to be teams that are more than willing to work with her given, you know, the potential that she has. So those point guards are certainly going to be hotly contested. That's when we'll also get into a little bit of discussing the do not contact tag, what that means, what it doesn't mean. Because I know that a lot of point guards enter with the do not contact for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, thinking about like post too, like Kate Koval was a big one that we found out the other day from Notre Dame. And I mean, that's now, I think, the third Notre Dame player that has decided to enter the transfer portal. And I mean, obviously, everybody is just speculating on that. But like in terms of Kate Koval, I mean, she is going to be a sophomore. She's really tall. I mean, I don't think we really got to see her potential as much for Notre Dame this season. But I'm curious to, you know, what her skill set could bring to like other programs, in your opinion.
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, she is certainly a major, major player that's going to also be pursued. So my little list, you know, of posts that I'm watching. One of them also a very, very recent addition from Notre Dame as we're recording here on the 2nd. Kylie Watson is also in the portal. And so that's another player who can play in the post who is going to be getting a lot of calls. I believe she went in do not contact, which again does not necessarily mean she knows where she's going. But she's going to be someone who a lot of people are really interested in. Brea Cunningham out of Arizona was someone who got a good bit of buzz when she first entered, but she was one of the first players in the portal. So died off a little bit, but I think she's going to be a massive get for whoever ends up securing her. Wisconsin had a duo go in Carter McRae and Sarah Williams, where, you know, Sarah Williams a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and then Carter McRae just really has that solid sort of versatility at 6'1", and so those two are going to be really big. And then again, you know, you have some names that maybe fly a little bit under the radar. Yulia Grabovskaya from Michigan. She's 6'5". The big thing with post is you can't teach height. And so when you've shown the ability to get up and down the court, to run an offense, to play solid defense, and then if you could score a little bit, like there's a lot of teams that will take that. And so we're going to be talking to Caitlin Weimar. We're going to be talking to, you know, Grace Buffelli, and then you have, I mean, obviously Samaya Smith is going to factor in there as well. So the age really makes a big difference as well in some of these considerations with fit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's such like you go so in depth, especially because there's so many of them who enter the transfer portal now, and so many, you know, there's so much parity around the league, and NIL obviously gets into it. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how the transfer portal has changed the scope of women's college basketball and exactly how NIL plays into it. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets for when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple and easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, we are back here with Jamie Steyer Johnson. We're talking everything transfer portal. And, we talked about the players who are going to be entering and some of the big names over the next few weeks who will be committing to new schools. Let's kind of get into the impact that the addition of the transfer portal has added on women's college basketball. Of course, it's fairly new in the past, maybe, couple of years. And then you also have the fact that players have extended eligibility right now, and then NIL as well. So maybe just give insight onto what it was like before the transfer portal and how players moved schools and how it was kind of difficult, and just kind of a little bit now into how it's made it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, students, because these are student athletes, right, have always been able to transfer to different schools and change where they're going to school for whatever reason. And that's why a lot of these restrictions on athletes have been lifted. In fact, that's the reason that NIL exists as well, is that students have always been able to capitalize off of their social media presence, been able to do these brand deals. And because these student athletes were playing sports, they were specifically prohibited from doing things that their classmates were able to do, even if it didn't have anything with their sport. So that's really the core of a lot of these issues. And so the big thing is, the transfer portal is kind of the way that people do it now and get in there and how they go about contacting them. The big difference in the reason we're seeing more transfers is because you no longer sit out a year. You no longer are required to redshirt if you enter during the transfer window. And so that's really the major change that we've seen. And to not just have that be for, at first it was just for your first transfer. Now, because of some, legal injunction, whatever stuff, it now is unlimited transfers. You can go to a new school every year, and as long as it's within the window, as long as you're making progress on your degree, a very important aspect of it that gets overlooked a lot, you are able to play immediately. And so that's really what we've seen. And the big thing is it provides a lot of freedom to players. It provides a lot of leverage. It means that coaches and programs, you're constantly re-recruiting your players. You're not just taking for granted that, we're going to have these kids coming back next year. Maybe you'll have the odd transfer out for whatever reason, but it generally was a really big deal. It was a shock. It was, it was something that was talked about and really, it was just not common. And now it is. And it's taken some time for people to catch up to that, I think, in the media, in the public, to go from transferring, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Oh no, why are they doing this? To it could be anything, and you just kind of have to wait and see if something comes out. If it seems like it's a pattern, then sure, there may be cause for concern in some places, but having players transfer out on its face doesn't tell you much about the program. It just tells you more about kind of the state of college athletics. And so I like to say that you can't build a championship team in the transfer portal, but you can complete one. You're not going to be probably bringing in 8 transfers and going and winning a championship. Yeah. But if you bring in maybe one or two or three every year, but they have time to play together and get to know each other, that really can elevate you. And so, there's teams that are put together of mostly transfers that have a lot of success. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but in general, you're seeing teams that are returning a good bit of their minutes, a good bit of their production from previous years, because it's really underrated how difficult it is for players to adjust to a new school, a new style, a new coaching staff, new teammates, a new role. That is not easy. And so if you're doing that with a lot of players at once, there's going to be road bumps. If you're doing that with a player that's core to your team, that's going to have bumps. And so a lot of people look at it as kind of a cure-all. It's certainly not that. It can help a lot. It can boost a lot. It means that players have, again, the freedom where they don't feel like they're stuck anywhere. But it's not an easy, quick fix. Recruiting is still really important. Retaining your players is so important. It was kind of funny. As you said, I work with Iowa State, and so we had a couple of pretty big names, and Addie Brown and Audie Crooks, both of whom made posts saying, hey, I'm not leaving. And that's one of the biggest announcements of the whole cycle for us, because it's just putting rumors to bed. It's saying, yeah, okay, great. We have the core of our team coming back. And I really like it. It puts to bed a lot of the speculation. And so retaining your players is something that I think has been historically taken for granted, because it was generally pretty common. And now we're seeing the places that do retain their players, that do develop their players, just how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about not being able to build a championship team, and you think about a lot of the teams that have won, quite a lot in the past few years, whether that's national championships, conference championships, whatever. And yeah, it's those players who have maybe added one or two pieces, those teams who have added one or two pieces, but ultimately, I think what the transfer portal has done, just by, nature, is really encourage programs to strengthen that team culture, which I don't think wasn't there before, but it just gives a little bit of an incentive to be like, okay, let's really lock in. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page. And, so that when somebody enters, it's easy to just kind of integrate them into the system. And then you also, like you said, having retention of players as well. But something that is interesting about it is NIL. And it's funny to, we're in this big conversation right now, especially with people having those COVID years still lingering, is whether to enter into the WNBA draft or stay, and how NIL affects it. And some people say, you should stay in college because you're going to make so much more money. And then, there's the other things. And it's just like a very nuanced conversation, because ultimately every single player is going to have different opportunities in the WNBA, in college, and NIL. There's the whole endorsement part of it, but there's also, now the collective NIL business. And so, when these players are deciding where to go, like how much, and not even thinking about the WNBA draft, like just thinking about the transfer portal going from one school to another, how does the NIL of it all kind of affect how people could be making their decisions?
Yeah, I mean, choosing where to play, whether it be coming out of high school or whether it be in the transfer portal, has always been a deeply personal decision. And NIL factoring into it doesn't change that. It just gives you one more factor that you have to consider, like these players needed more, right? But it's going to depend on the person. It's going to depend on the situation. I think that especially on the women's side, we have seen so much evidence that if you are in a good situation for you as a person, for you as a player, there are opportunities that can come to you. It's not dependent upon going to a big name school, going to a school that has a lot of resources in collective. There's people who are very concerned with making their money, having guaranteed money. And so that's what their chief concern is going to be. And so they're going to be weighing, okay, this is the offer I have from this school and this is the offer I have from that school. But realistically, if you are a top prospect, okay, for the people who are potentially going to be making significant money, who have the potential to be, a nationally talked about player, if you go to a team where you are going to consistently contribute, where you are going to be able to be consistently competitive as a team, which keeps you in the news cycle, and then if you are a marketable person, which I know that's a buzzword. I know that a lot of people have been called not marketable for a lot of really BS reasons. Yep. I'm talking about truly a marketability standpoint of, are you active on social media? Do you have a specific presence? Do you have, a fan base that you personally are appealing to? Or does your school have a large fan base? Mm-hmm. Do you have businesses nearby that see value in investing in women's athletes? Or do you have a specific market that you are going to be really well connected to. For instance, you think about like on the WNBA level, how Dejanay Carrington has started doing cosmetics partnerships because of, the makeup that she wears and things like that. So all of those things, if you prioritize a good fit and putting yourself in a good spot to be on a good team and contributing to that good team, you're probably going to have more opportunities coming your way. And so the differences in collective packages may be mitigated by that. And so that's where it's just not a simple answer on the NIL front. Yeah. Because there's just very little transparency. It's so new still. It's changing constantly. You now are going to have direct payments coming from the schools. And so it's changing like day by day, month by month, year by year. But to me, especially in women's basketball, because of historically the presence that women have on social media and the engagement they have there and the way that they can personally build fan bases, and the fact that you don't have one and dones where you are going to be in college for 4 years, barring like major like uncommon circumstances, people are going to get to know you better than they do on the men's side. And that's why historically a lot of women's basketball fans have been women's basketball fans, is they feel like they have that great connection with the players. So even though they're transferring sometimes, even though you may not have as many people setting down roots in your school that you follow, there's going to be people that are in the game that you're seeing consistently. And that's really, really big for marketing. That's really, really big for brand deals. And so it just depends on the person. For a lot of people, I could list half a dozen reasons that they're transferring or factors in their decisions that are above NIL. But again, it's the same way it's always been. It's just really personal.
Yeah, for sure. So let's take a break. And then when we come back, we're going to get into, I guess, the process of the transfer portal. You have definitely a unique experience with that, having, a little bit of inside knowledge with Iowa State. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Daylight savings time snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. When you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Whether I'm at the game or traveling, 5-Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. All right, we are back with Jamie Steyer Johnson here talking about the transfer portal. And so you're at Iowa State, as the radio color analyst. Your mom is the associate head coach. Shout out Jody. We love Jody. And so you kind of get like this interesting inside look to the transfer portal and kind of the process of either when players leave, when players come, when they're deciding on where they want to transfer to. And so we say this like transfer portal. And so, is there literally like an interface online where the coaches are going and looking at people? Like, just kind of take us into the thing. The do not contact tag is very interesting. And just kind of like take us through like the behind the scenes of what a team is doing while all of this, like, we're all just like sitting here waiting for news.
Yeah. So it is literally a portal. It is an interface online. So when a player decides that they want to leave, it used to be a pretty convoluted process. There was a lot of power held by the institution where they had to be granted permission for other coaches to contact them, and they could drag their feet on that. They could say that some teams could contact them while others couldn't. And that just was clearly unfair to the student athletes. And so that's why the whole portal was made. It's why they streamlined the process. So if a player decides that they want to leave, it's when it's within the transfer window, there's going to be an administrator at their school. It's not their coach. It's someone that is within the athletic department, but in administration. And so they're going to notify them in writing that they are intending to enter the transfer portal. Most players are going to tell their coaches personally, whether face-to-face or, contact them in some way, but it's not required anymore. And that is something that is obviously controversial, but again, it's about protecting players. And so it's not prohibiting them, but it means that if you're in a situation where you really don't feel like you can have that conversation, where you don't feel safe or don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, you aren't forced to do that anymore. So you notify your institution in writing. They have 2 business days to enter your information into the portal, at which point you are able to be contacted. You go on there. Other schools have a login, and they can see all the players that are in there. They can see stats. They can see, grade information, things like that. Because as I mentioned earlier, something that gets overlooked a lot is you have to be making progress towards your degree. And so there's certain times where if you're going from one school to another and your credits don't transfer quite right, it can set you back. You may have to make up a bunch of credits in summer school. You may have to change your major. There's very specific things that go into that. That's also why for grad transfers, that's kind of a little bit of a bonus, because you don't have to worry about transferring credits. It's just about, I can imagine doing that grad program. I can get admitted to that grad program. Obviously, that's part of it. But it makes it a little bit easier as far as the actual logistics of the transfer. So at that point, coaches can contact you. The do not contact tag just means that your contact isn't out there for literally anyone who hops in the portal to contact you. And so a lot of players that go in do not contact either have a list of 3 or 4 schools that they're interested in, and so they're going to reach out personally. Maybe a coach already has their number. Then it's hard because this is also very new. So there's things that are rules. There's things that are rules of thumb. There's things that are just not enforced. And so there's some things I'm a little unclear on. And so I don't know that there's a rule banning people from contacting players that go in as do not contact if they don't reach out to them. Yeah. I believe they could still reach out. Their contact information just isn't right there in the portal. So they would have to either already have it or reach out in some other way. But you're not going to harass people. But for players like, an Olivia Miles, if she had gone in as no contact, it would indicate to me that she at least has an idea of places she may want to go. But I wouldn't be saying, she knows where she's going. There's people who do that. There is tampering that occurs. We all are realistic here. Yeah. But it is not in any way a guarantee. To say that everyone who goes in do not contact already knows where they're going is completely false. It just means that they do not want to be contacted by any random person. They generally just want to be a little bit more in control of it. So that's really the big thing. That's also why you see reports of so-and-so is planning to enter the transfer portal. That would be, leaked or just given by the player, by their agent, by a family member, whatever, just to get the word out there, because that likely means that they've already informed the institution, but they haven't done processing their entry to the portal. Well, just some of the reasons that people go in would be location. Maybe they want to be closer to home. Maybe they don't like the area they're in. And maybe they want to be closer to family. Relationships, whether they have good ones with teammates. Maybe they have teammates that leave. It can be sort of a ripple effect where if one person leaves, there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the biggest reasons where people want to feel like they're in control of their situation. And so if you have players leave, other ones start looking around and saying, I don't know who's going to be here. I don't want to be stuck and in a bad situation. And so they'll just kind of jump ship. And that's part of why speculation is so difficult on specific circumstances on teams, because what's happening behind the scenes is so complex. And when those ripple effects happen, they happen really fast too. So, you think about Notre Dame, Olivia Miles leaves, and all of a sudden everyone's kind of looking around like, I didn't really anticipate that. Maybe I should be thinking about it. If she's thinking about it, maybe I should be thinking about it. Should I be thinking about it? And these are 18, 19, 20, 21, maybe 22-year-old people. And so there's rash decisions that are made. And so it doesn't necessarily say anything about a program. It shouldn't be alarm bells. I'm very much a wait and see kind of person. And because I've experienced it personally where a lot of talk of, oh my gosh, what's wrong there? What's wrong there? Well, you have a great season the next year. Don't know that there was anything wrong with who remained, but it's really tough. But when you have quick commitments, that generally is a good indication, not of tampering. That's what everyone always thinks. Yeah. It's like, oh, within a week, you were tampering. No, it means that you guys, it's like you ask someone out on a date and they agree immediately. It's like, oh, so you were also interested. Like, you know, Iowa State announced today Jada Williams committed. Mm-hmm. And so she was interested in Iowa State. Iowa State really wanted to shore things up at point guard. Yep. She went on a visit. There was a connection. She already knew Addie Brown. She has family around here. Okay, great. This works out, you know? And so you've got Ole Miss, who is really reliant on transfers. They've already gotten Latasha Lattimore and Caitlin Peterson, who are, oh my goodness, tremendous gets. I am a huge Latasha Lattimore fan. I've talked about this over on Her Hoop Stats. But, you know, the pieces that have already fallen into place early, that's always really encouraging to me, because it says that they had an idea of what they wanted and they got it. Because you're not making a rash decision probably once you go into the portal. When you get down, you've been in the portal a while. Yeah. Maybe you struck out on your first couple options, or maybe you're just trying to weigh all your options. But generally, quick commitments are good. And that's always kind of a nice thing to see people start sort of having their landing spots. But that's where you also have the dual considerations of, okay, people are committing. Are there players who thought that those were going to be their minutes next year? Because maybe they're going to be going into the portal. And so there's all just this math that goes into it on the coaching side. And it's
I'm
crazy.
sure there's a lot of communication. Like, I'm sure a lot of
it's like I sent you my notes, because I have it with asterisks, I have it with underlines. It's communication. Like, anymore, you don't wait long for, you start having meetings before the season's over. You have meetings immediately after. You are in constant contact with your current players, because you want to all be on the same page. And of course, this is, you know, in my experience in the Iowa State program, but this is very common. And so you have to be in touch. You have to make sure that you have that open dialogue. And, you know, I think it's a great thing where if you're in a place you don't want to be, you get to go be where you want to. But you have to have this effort on both sides, on the player side, on the coaching side. And then obviously there's a lot of other people involved. But to be able to maintain that communication, and you see really, really great things blossom because of it. You see really great teams, really great relationships. And so it's tough. It's changed things a lot, but certainly to have freedom to be able to do what you want to do, what's good for you as a young person is really crucial.
It's great. Yeah. Well, this has been enlightening for me. I hope it's been enlightening for people who are, you know, maybe even new to the community or don't really know much about the transfer portal, but definitely an interesting time of year when you have all of this going on, along with national championship, you know, finals coming up. And so I know you'll be in Tampa. So, you know, if you're watching this, make sure to follow Jamie over on, you know, the internet, to make sure you follow in Tampa. And I mean, we'll be back next week on Her Hoop Stats as well. So follow there. But thank you so much, Jamie, for coming to, you know, join me today. And for anyone else, thanks for dropping into Locked On Women's Basketball. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.